Hello, welcome back. My name is Justin. I'm one of the co-founders of Flipwise. I'm joined by Michael, the other co-founder.
Howdy, Justin.
Hi, how are you? It's been a while since we've done this.
It has been a while, hasn't it? We've been busy building stuff for Flipwise, and I don't know. We keep saying we want to do these more frequently, but then we also don't want to get on here and just stare at each other. So we kind of just been waiting until, okay, do we feel like we have enough useful material to go over that'd be interesting? And I guess we finally reached that point this week.
Yeah. I think we did like 2 episodes in a row, like 2 weeks in a row, and we're feeling good about it and thinking, oh, we'll just keep this up and do it more frequently. But then I don't know, maybe a month passed before we sat down. But yeah, you're right. I mean, we just like don't want to get on here and talk about nothing. But we do have stuff to talk about today. We're working on like two big projects right now. One is an income statement, and related to that is sort of tax reporting functionality. And so in order to do that, we've had to do a lot of sort of under the hood prerequisite work. Some of that under the hood, some of it not. So I think that's what we're going to talk about today, is some of that work that we've released over the last few weeks to sort of prep and get ready for the income statement work and for the tax reporting work. And we'll talk about the income statement and the tax reporting in a little bit and what exactly those features are. I think they're going to be really cool. I think they're going to be game changing for sure, especially the tax reporting stuff. So I'm excited to talk about that. But maybe we'll jump in. It's kind of like 3 big projects we finished recently. There's some major changes we made to cancellations and how Flipwise handles cancellations, which sounds kind of boring. Truthfully, maybe it is kind of boring, but we'll talk about it anyway. And also another project that we worked on was something that internally we called like floating transactions. I don't know, what do we call that externally? Automated ingestion of transactions into the ledger. Is that, that's the long name for it? And then charitable contributions. And so those are 3 kind of projects that we were working on, which I don't know, how would you categorize that? To me, it's like making sure that if we're going to have an income statement that's going to tell you all the money going in and out of your business, top to bottom, we want to make sure that, we're recording all of that information. And we found that there were certain things that Flipwise was not really handling super well. And that's sort of the makeup of these topics that we're going to talk about today. So does that sound right?
That sounds right. Yeah. And we had certain things that we were storing in our database that we didn't really have a place to put them in the UI. Like they didn't make sense to show at the product level or the order level or within sales insights. And so kind of the kind of income statement we're working towards will give us a place to show some of these kinds of costs and revenues that we didn't have a good place to put until now.
Yeah, well, maybe we'll start with that. Let's start with the floating transactions. That's what we called it internally. Really, it was what you said. It was like Flipwise was automatically picking up on all of these transactions coming from eBay that were unrelated to orders. And when they're related to orders, it's really easy for Flipwise to assign those credits or debits that it picks up to those specific orders. A good example is like a shipping cost adjustment, where eBay will let Flipwise know that, hey, this user was charged $14 for something and it has that order ID, then we can associate that order ID and we can see that it's a shipping cost adjustment. Everything works great. But what we found over time is that there were many transactions coming from eBay for our members that had no order ID associated with it. And as you said, historically, we had nowhere to put that information, because Flipwise is very sort of product centric and order centric. And so we had nowhere to put that information. Another example of that is like an eBay store subscription. So when you get charged an eBay store subscription, that gets paid out of your eBay funds. And Flipwise would see that, but we had nowhere to put it because it was unrelated to an order. So this floating transactions work, there's my dog saying hello. This floating transaction work that we did captured all of those transactions that were not associated with orders and put them into the ledger, so the Flipwise ledger. And maybe just a bit of context there if it's your first time listening to this, or maybe you're not even a Flipwise user. In Flipwise, we have a ledger that allows you to record general business expenses. So log your mileage, or if you're paying for Flipwise itself, or you're buying boxes, it allows you to record all of that information, all those expenditures, and have a sort of complete picture of all the expenses of your business. And so with this work that we did, this floating transaction work, it would pull in automatically and record into your ledger your eBay store subscription, for example, or any number of random credits and debits that eBay charges you over time that are unrelated to orders. I think, this work, just on a personal level, I think was really important for me, because eBay does not make it clear when they're charging you like this. There's, that you have a transaction screen, but almost nobody goes to that transaction screen on eBay. And if it's not related to an order, you sort of just don't know that you're being charged this. And so, when you sign up for Flipwise, or you're already signed up for Flipwise, you now go into your ledger, and you're going to see all these automatically ingested transactions in that ledger and be like, oh, what is that? Wow, I didn't even know that I was being charged that money. So it's a really transparent feature in Flipwise that is going to give you a much bigger, more detailed picture of the actual money that you're being charged by eBay. So it's pretty cool, I think.
It is pretty cool. Yeah. I think another reason it's kind of cool is that we're sort of embracing the reality of the situation, which is that when we get these transactions from eBay, a lot of the times the various metadata that we would hope to find for each transaction just isn't there. The store subscription fee that comes through, for example, there's no structured data that tells us, hey, this is a eBay store subscription. We can kind of guess based on, they give us a transaction memo that kind of, we can make an educated guess that it probably is a store subscription fee, but we don't know for sure. And then there are other situations a transaction will come through that's an adjustment for a shipping label that should actually belong to a specific order, but they don't actually give us that order association in some cases for some reason. And so, but basically what we do is we just kind of make all this available to the user, and then they can kind of use their human brain to decide, kind of make their own kind of educated assumptions about what these things actually are. And so if they see a shipping label adjustment for specific, and they know it's for a specific order, they can associate that ledger entry with the product, and then boom, now that that credit is now kind of associated with the product revenue, and it's factored into net return and all that. And then likewise, they can use the existing kind of ledger functionality for categorizing ledger entries, and so it kind of just gives the power to the user to decide, hey, I'm going to categorize these things in a certain way. If I know that they belong to certain products, I'll associate them. So it's nice and transparent and gives kind of full control to the user, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, it's so weird that eBay is just, there's a lot of oddities in working with the eBay API, and this is another one where, you'll have a shipment that goes out, and then you'll see as a part of that order that you were charged a shipping label adjustment fee, usually an error, and then and eBay sends us all the correct information to be able to associate that with the correct order. But then when they sometimes, which we don't know when or why, sometimes they will issue a credit, that they fix their mistake or whatever. When they don't provide the order ID. It's so weird. Why would you not provide the order ID? But it's really cool though, as you said, because in those situations, you can actually sort of override that. You can say oh, well, even though eBay didn't say it was for this order, in Flipwise, you can go and associate it with that order, manually. And so definitely a pretty cool feature. I'm really excited to have it there. And I do think, a lot of people ask when we release this, are we going to automate other platforms too, and into the ledger and have automatic transactions? And I think that's probably a safe bet in the future. For example, Flipwise itself, costs money, and we could pretty easily get your monthly Flipwise cost to show up in the ledger automatically too. And so I think there will be some improvements like that coming down the line later next year.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've talked about as well, this is, again, down the line, but why not allow you to link your bank account to the ledger? And it's the same things that we're doing with eBay, just kind of automatically import your transactions into the ledger, and then you can decide how you want to categorize them. So that's probably something we'll do at some point as well.
Yeah, might as well. I think that would be a pretty nice feature to have that too. Just have everything automated in there. I think that's the long-term goal for sure.
Yeah.
Well, that's one of the 3 projects we released recently. And again, that's related to that income statement and tax report, just because we want that income statement and tax report to have a complete picture of all your expenses and revenue. And so with that floating transaction work, it ensures that all of that, that we're capturing everything that we can possibly know about. The second project we worked on was around cancellations. This one's less interesting, I'll say. And I think, it's been a while since we released this, but I think the gist of that work is that Flipwise sort of historically assumed that when you had a cancellation, when somebody orders something from you, before you ship it, somebody cancels it, it gets canceled, it gets relisted. It's like a neutral event for you from a revenue standpoint. You don't lose any money, you don't gain any money. And Flipwise historically just always assumed that all cancellations were revenue neutral. Turns out that's not the case. And that's one of the benefits of having a growing user base is we get to understand more and more edge cases that aren't that common. And it turns out that there are situations where you have a cancellation and it does have a positive or negative impact from a revenue perspective. Usually it's a negative, and I think the most common situation is you have an order, you ship it, but then the cancellation gets requested after you've already created the label. So you've already created the label, you have that expense, and then the order gets canceled, and you just cancel it. And usually you submit for reimbursement for that shipping label cost. But there is a time where that order technically generated a negative net return, and historically Flipwise just sort of ignored that or treated it as zero. Does that all sound right?
No, that all sounds right. Yeah,
Okay.
We've noticed other situations, and this again just kind of it's a weird intermittent thing. But sometimes you don't get refunded all of your fees for a canceled order. Like a lot of times, it seems like most of the time, 100% of your fees are refunded. But I definitely noticed situations where there are like those 2 final value fees, and one of them is like fixed at 30 cents. And that one is sometimes not refunded for canceled orders. So you may have like a negative 30 cents.
Oh, the insertion fee. That makes sense. Yeah. So when you get charged an insertion fee on listing, that doesn't get refunded if it's canceled. Is that what you're saying?
I think it's actually one of the fixed, I think it's the fixed final value fee.
Oh, the fixed final value
yeah.
fee.
And it's not all the time, but it's sometimes. So now if that happens, you'll be able to just see, oh, hey, I lost 30 cents or whatever it was on this order.
Interesting.
It's all this stuff is like, I don't know, the actual real world impact on individual sellers is going to be pretty small. It may just be the difference of a few cents or a few bucks in their total like net return for a given period of time, but it's still just important. It needs to people won't trust the platform if they start to notice little things, even if they're small things that are missing or off. And so it just feels like, again, part of making sure everything's complete and correct leading up to income statement and tax report, even if the impact is small.
Yep. Yeah. So now canceled orders, Flipwise does not assume that they will always be neutral revenue impacting. Now, if they are positive or negative impact to your revenue, that will be reflected both at the order level or product level in Flipwise and on the future income statement and any tax reporting you do as well. So it's pretty cool. I think that's a maybe less sexy project, but an important one nonetheless. I think the big reason, because of what you said there, which is that, Flipwise is all about having accurate numbers, and if it doesn't have accurate numbers, it starts to lose its value. And so we take all of that very important. Anytime we uncover certain scenarios where our numbers aren't matching up for whatever reason, like that's kind of a drop everything and fix and understand why. And I think it's, I think we always say like we found the last one like that. But I do think that, we were really like, I think we've done a lot of important work around this, and it's, I think, a very, very solid at this point when, maybe a year ago it wasn't nearly as solid. So,
yeah.
Well, the third project, so beyond floating transactions and cancellations, was charitable contributions. And this is one that just kind of was surprisingly snuck under the radar of our awareness. Like I always knew that charitable contributions were a thing where if you sell something on eBay, you can elect to have some percentage of that, the proceeds, get donated to charity automatically, which is a really cool feature. And I think I just sort of assumed that would always be reflected in the sort of gross income that eBay's telling us, when you make an order. And it turns out that's not the case, that it's actually I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Michael, but I think eBay kind of treats it as a fee, right? Isn't that right?
Yeah, for the most part, yeah, it's kind of treated as one of the many different types of seller fees, but that's mostly true. But also, it appears in a different spot in the API than all the other seller fees, which is why we weren't just automatically picking it up like we do all other seller fees, because we had to go figure out exactly where it was and make sure we're grabbing it from that spot. But yeah, so it's mostly treated like a seller fee, but with a few small differences.
Gotcha. Okay. So now, like, in the past, if you had eBay configured to show, to contribute some percentage of your sales automatically, Flipwise would just not be aware of that in any way whatsoever. So definitely not a good thing. But the work that we did now shows charitable contributions on a per order basis as a line item right next to your other fees and selling costs. It includes the charitable contributions it considers it a selling cost, even though it's not quite a cost, but it is broken out as a separate line item. And then what else is there related to charitable contributions? Oh, we also just went back and did a migration of everyone's store who had made charitable contributions in the past, so that your previous orders, even though they weren't showing those charitable contributions before, that they now show them. So all of that is retroactive. You don't have to do anything. If you've made a charitable contribution, it should be showing up on all those orders in your history. So pretty cool little feature.
It's pretty cool. And again, it's one of those things. I think I checked this morning, and about 2% of active Flipwise subscribers have made at least one charitable contribution. Yeah. So we have a pretty big user base now. So that's it's a reasonable size group of users. But in the big scheme of things, it's relatively small. But again, it's just one of those things where we gotta, even though it just affects a small percentage of users, we gotta make sure we're addressing it and handling it properly.
Yeah, for sure. But those were like the three big projects that we identified as kind of critical to have in place before we could start working on this income statement and improved tax reporting. And so let's talk about that a little bit. First of all, kind of talk about like the current state of Flipwise and why we're changing certain things and why we're introducing new features like the income statement and sort of advanced tax reporting. And it's because we sort of have these capabilities now, but they're not as easy and delightful to use as we want them to be. The first is, we'll start with income statement. And, right now, if you click into insights in Flipwise, that's going to give you sort of a complete picture of your sales performance, but very specific to sales performance. It does not include things that fall outside of specific transaction or specific orders on eBay. And so it's a great way to look and see how are my sales performing. But if you're using Flipwise to track expenses and credits and revenue, income, all of that stuff outside of orders, the sales insights screen wasn't really giving you a complete picture of that. And so that's what the income statement's really meant to do, is give sellers a complete picture of the performance of their business, including sales insights like we have today, but also including all other expenses that are happening. So anything from the ledger, basically everything that Flipwise knows is going to be included in this income statement. And it's really like, we also we almost called this a profit and loss statement because it's basically the same thing. And so you'll be able to select timeframes, just like you can select on the sales insight screen right now. You can select any time frame you want, one day, any custom window of time, any year, whatever, you can select, and it'll produce this income statement report that shows all revenue coming in, all expenses going out, across sales and across the ledger, and then show you a net return for that particular time period. And it's very granular, so it's gonna give you a line item for every single thing that it knows about, so you can just really have a complete picture of how your business is performing at any given time for any given time period whatsoever. So it's pretty cool. I'm really excited to get this up and out there.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I'll say that I kind of was thinking about this whole track of work we've been talking about leading up to income statement and tax report is necessary, but not necessarily that fun or exciting. Or I figured we'd deliver it to our users and they'd be like, yeah. Of course, Flipwise provides that, but where's the more kind of exciting stuff?
Yeah.
But I will say, now that we're kind of building this thing right now, we're about to enter internal QA, so we're pretty far along with it, and it's starting to feel really cool. Just for all the reasons you just talked about, it's just very fun. One, you can kind of generate an income statement really quickly, and we have the same kind of date filter that we have on Insights. So you can very quickly see today or week to date or last month or last year or all time. You can quickly jump between these different time frames, which is just really fun to kind of look at at the micro level and then more macro level. But it's also really cool. I think a lot of the work that went into this is almost like information design kind of work. How do we take what's just a wealth of data and display it in a very concise, digestible way? And so we spent a lot of time thinking about what are the specific line items we'll show, how will we label them, like what are the things we roll up. And I think, I don't know, it's just really fun now to kind of generate an income statement. Like for the week to date income statement, it's a little short, tight income statement as you'd expect. But then if you change the time scale to like all of last year, then it's just this ton of data, and you can kind of see it all at a glance. It all fits on your screen at once. And I don't know, just the power of just seeing all that data all at once in kind of a digestible format that kind of reflects everything happening with your business. I think our users are going to like it. I think it's going to be really fun to just explore how your business is doing in across all these different time frames.
Yeah. And I think it's made especially interesting for folks that are using our sort of our functionality that allows you to record sales that happen outside of eBay as well. And so, it's going to break down all of your sales and fees and shipping costs and everything across all marketplaces that you sell it, including like if you're using Flipwise to manage sort of local sales. I know there's a ton of people using Flipwise to record sales at their antique booth and at flea markets and things like that. And so, this income statement is inclusive of all of that. And so you can just see on a marketplace by marketplace basis how much revenue is coming in for any given time period, how many expenses are going out for any given time period, along with just everything else. And yeah, it sounds like, on paper, it sort of sounds like maybe like a boring project, but I agree. I do think that users it's going to be eye-opening, I think, for folks once they have that, and be able to see sort of what actually is happening with their business across all facets instead of maybe just a smaller slice of it like it is today. So very exciting.
Yeah. Just one other thing I'll add that we kind of made this decision just in the last couple of weeks, but for both the income statement and then the tax report, which is coming later, we're going to make it possible and easy so that if you're looking at an income statement for a particular time period, you can kind of click a link to download all the data that was considered when compiling the income statement. So it's one is similar to the kind of stuff you can get when you do manual exports, like of your inventory and your sales, but it'll be just filtered to be the exact set of data that's related to the income statement. But then there's also data that you can't export today, like the transactions that were considered, the specific seller fees that were considered. So I think that's going to be very powerful as well, where I can just look at my income statement for 2023 and click a button, download all the data. I think we haven't talked too much about this, but I think probably what we'll do is like provide kind of a description of those different exports, and then just tell the user, hey, if you're looking at this particular CSV, if you sum up all the values in this column, then that will equal this total on the income statement. So they can just very easily see, here's all my raw data, and then here's the kind of basic calculations that were performed to come up with the income statement using that raw data, which I think, especially for really data, kind of the data nerds, of which we have many who use Flipwise, just the ability to kind of really dig in and quickly understand how all the pieces of the puzzle fit together, I think will be really powerful as well.
Yeah, I think that's super important because we definitely have folks reach out to us and say like, hey, I'm looking at my sales insights screen right now. I see that I've spent $143 on marketplace fees, but that feels wrong for whatever reason. And they're sort of like, how are you getting at that number? And so the idea here, especially with the income statement and tax reporting, is that as a part of that functionality, we will include with it, direct access to the raw data that's powering it, so that if you want to double check what's going on and make sure everything is totaling up as it should, all that will be right there for you. And I think that's especially important with tax reporting as well, because when you're doing your taxes, you just want to have a lot of confidence that the numbers you're working with are accurate. So let's talk about that really quick. This is, I think, going to be just really fun and exciting for our users, for myself. I'm trying to make this easy for myself, and I know it'll be useful for other folks too. But we've been working with a CPA named Mark, and he's a YouTuber also. He runs the Not Your Dad's CPA YouTube channel. So we partnered with him because he's a CPA specializing in with resellers. So those are his clients, are resellers. And so I sat down with him, Michael and I sat down with him and said, look, we want to build functionality into Flipwise like that is so good that you are going to want to wish that your clients all used Flipwise. So like, tell us, Mark, this is us talking to Mark, like tell us what you want. Like as a CPA whose clients are resellers, what do you wish all of your clients provided for you? And that's what we're going to build. And so effectively, it's very similar to the income statement, because a tax report is very similar to an income statement over the course of an entire year. Its purpose is to show all the revenue that you have coming in and all the expenses going out, and give you everything that you can write off. And so at its core, the tax report is kind of like a layer on top of the income statement. But there are some differences. There's some differences in a tax report versus an income statement. And so an income statement is really about like, how's my business performing right now? A tax report's more about like, how much revenue did I generate, and how many expenses did I generate? And those, even as I say them out loud, sound very similar, but I'll just illustrate one example of how they're very different. And that is around what is called like a non-cash expense, for example. And so there's a lot of expense. If you're using Flipwise to record all of your general business expenses, most of those are what's called cash expenses, meaning you spent $50 on boxes. Like that money came out of your bank account. That's an expense. And that's going to show up on your income statement. It's going to show up on your tax report. But a non-cash expense is something like your mileage. So you drove 100 miles to pick up some stuff, and you get to write off $60 or whatever for that. You didn't spend $60. And so if that was showing up as an expense on your income statement, that really wouldn't make a whole lot of sense. But for a tax report, very important, because you actually can write off that $60. So that's one of the core differences between something like an income statement and a tax report, is that it's going to show all of those non-cash expenses on a tax report. And other differences, I'm trying to think off the top of my head here. It's like accrual inventory accounting methods and cash inventory accounting methods, which I don't want to get into all of the details on this podcast, because they're pretty boring, but we will support both. For those of you who know the differences between the two, we will support both of them. You will be allowed to see, your inventory costs as your total cost of goods sold, or your total spent on new inventory over the time period. So we'll support things like that. But the general idea is that we want to make it, single push button easy to generate everything that you need to pass over to your CPA, and that's generally how it'll function. Is you'll be able to say, hey, 2023, assuming you've entered all your data into Flipwise, and I know you have, because you do a good job and you clear those tasks every day. But assuming you've entered in all your data into Flipwise, you can just press a button, and it's going to produce a series of reports that's going to be tailor-made for a CPA to do what they need to do your taxes, or for you if you're doing your taxes on your own. So including all of that, like supporting data that we talked about in terms of the income statement. So not only would there be a clean, like easy to read, here's all your expenses and revenue, but here's all of every line item that powers that is for the CPAs that really want to go through there and double check it. So does that sound right?
Yeah, that all sounds right. And we'll also, you mentioned users needing to fill out all their data. Well, we'll give you some warnings if you haven't done that. Like you generated a tax report, we'll say, hey, it looks like you're missing purchase costs for a few products here. And so we'll give you a nice checklist of things you need to go do in order to be confident that your tax report is kind of complete and accurate.
Yeah. And I forgot to mention this, but today, you can do your taxes using Flipwise. But what you're having to do is like generate multiple reports and sort of string them together on your own. And so, we actually we launched publicly the week of the taxes were due. I think in April, it was like April 6th, I think. So maybe the week before. Most people at that point had already done their taxes for 2022, it would have been. And so, having robust tax reporting functionality was not at the top of our list at that time, but we knew we had to do it before the year was out, because, the users that have come on are going to have expectations that you can easily do your taxes. And, like I said, you can do your taxes with, all the data is there in Flipwise today, but you do have to generate a bunch of different reports to do it. It's just it's not a magical experience, and we want to make a magical experience, as magical as you can get for tax reporting. So. Yeah,
absolutely. It's kind of, it should be like the reward for a user who has diligently kept their data up to date all year. It's like, in return for all that, it should be dead easy for you, for Flipwise to tell you exactly, here's the data you need. Either do your taxes yourself or pop this over to your CPA, and they'll be delighted to get it. And then I think, obviously, we're not offering tax advice. We're not going to be opinionated in our tax report about how you do your taxes. That's up to you and your CPA. But there are certain, and we don't have to get into the weeds here, but where we can just come up with sensible defaults to kind of like when it comes to like the accrual versus cash accounting method, we're going to default to the one that kind of makes the most sense for somebody who uses Flipwise. But so if you don't want to think about it too much, if you just want to go straight to your CPA, like we'll send you down a good path with the ability then to adjust if you have a preference, your CPA has a preference about how to do your taxes. So it's pretty sweet. Everybody hates doing their taxes, but hopefully we can make it easier for our customers.
Yeah, I really think we can, and I'm excited to get that stuff out, before the year is out. And so that's our focus now is income statement and tax reporting. Those two are kind of intrinsically linked, and we're working on those in tandem. And after that is there's still a couple projects that we consider just like core that we need to have that we'll be focusing on after that. One of those is unlisted inventory, being able to add your unlisted inventory into Flipwise, and the other is around bulk editing. And this is a good transition into some user questions here because we do have some that folks have sent along. Marley Sound asks here, if at all possible, it would be appreciated if you could add a bulk edit or select all option for adding costs and purchase locations. I sell mostly similar items that come from the same place, all at the same cost. So it would save hours by just having that small, simple addition. Agreed, for sure. We need to have a bulk editing tool. Right now, if you do have tons of data that you need to input manually, you may find that to be slightly easier to do it like in spreadsheet software. And if you want to do that, you can send us a CSV and we can re-upload it back into Flipwise. But we've already done like the planning around this and sort of we have some ideas on how it would be implemented for bulk editing. But you need to be able to select many records, and you need to be able to update those many records with the same purchase location or the same storage location or even the same cost. I was actually thinking about this the other day, Michael. I don't know if I've talked to you about this, but I was thinking when we do this bulk editing functionality, imagine you're selecting 100 items and you're putting in a cost of $1. It makes sense that you would apply all that, that dollar to each, give each of those 100 selected items a cost of goods of $1. But it'd be cool if there was also an option within that to like say $100 instead, and check a box and say split that cost evenly across all of them that are selected, just as like a slightly, because we do get that request quite a bit, and I feel like we could kill two birds with one stone on that. So
I see. Like I bought a bunch of stuff today and I spent $50 on all of it, and I don't want to think too much about how I distribute those costs. Just take that $50 and just spread it across everything I bought today.
Exactly. Yeah. It's a very real use case. A lot of people, that's how they do it. They know that they spent $50.47 at a thrift store and they bought 12 items, and so I don't actually want to give a per item basis. I just want to do it quickly, and so I want to be able to support that as well. Personally, I give my items a very specific individual cost. It just helps me understand the performance of each individual sale, helps me understand whether I should have bought that again in the future. And if it doesn't have an accurate cost of goods, it's a little bit harder to do that, but teach their own. I mean, it makes sense both ways, I think.
Yeah.
So unlisted inventory, bulk editing, I think those two, after that income statement and tax report, I'll feel really good about the state of the platform, where obviously we have a ton more plans beyond that, but these are just things that they come up almost every day from our users asking, requesting, and wanting those. So that's our future. That's our next, however long, income statement, tax report, unlisted inventory, bulk editing. And then the sky's the limit. Then I feel like we get to like turn our attention to some really fun and magical tools in Flipwise. Let's see. We got another question here. Lori asks, thank you for all your videos. I watched lots of great info. I'm curious on the Flipwise software. How do you write off items that you have bought and then bring it home to only find a defect or broken piece? I have an entire pile of items that I can't sell because they have stains or they're broken. Yeah, Lori, that definitely happens. I would say every time I go out to buy something, I bring it home and it's in a condition that is, a surprise to me. And so we do have the ability to mark items as damaged or donated for that specific purpose. And so the only thing is, the only way that you get an item into Flipwise now is to list it on eBay. So it does have to be listed on eBay first. And that's, that's not ideal. I totally get, because you probably wouldn't want to list a broken thing in the first place. So when we have the ability to add unlisted inventory, obviously you'll be able to mark an unlisted item in your inventory as donated or damaged, but that's how we handle that today. Here's one for you, Michael. This is from, I can't pronounce that name, Walktum's Focus. Hi, Justin. Thanks for your great videos. I'm following and watching your content from Germany. Can I use Flipwise in Germany? And is it possible to run in the euro? Thank you.
Right. It's a good question. Today, the answer is no. We haven't opened up in Germany yet. We basically, the current state of like our international support is, we kind of like took baby steps into the countries where we had the most demand, which was Australia, the UK, and Canada. And so we've been up and running with those users for at least a few months now and kind of working out the kinks. Every new country we open up into seems like there's some weird little challenges to work through, whether on the kind of technical eBay side or sort of on the business side. There's kind of different privacy laws in every country that may affect like eBay's integration requirements.
Yeah.
So anyway, we kind of like took baby steps into those 3 additional countries in addition to the US, and we've kind of let things solidified. And then I think we haven't set a specific time for this yet, but it's mainly just about before we open up in new countries, we just want to make sure that we have the time and space set aside to do support and to handle whatever new kind of challenges come up. But I think at some point next year, I don't know if we want to give an estimate on time here, but at some point next year, I think we'll the EU is the next big location. So there's a lot of I don't know, from like a business perspective for us, it's relatively easy for us to open in all the EU countries at once. And so we may take a baby step into Germany or 1 or 2 countries, but I think then before long we would just open up to all the EU countries. So I think you can't use it in Germany yet, or rather, if you have an account, if you have an eBay Germany account, you can't use Flipwise yet, but that is definitely coming soon. And the currency will all be respected. You'll be seeing euros, and you'll see the cool little euro currency symbol in Flipwise. That'll all be handled in kind of a first class way.
Yeah, for sure. I think my other hesitation around just entering into some of these other countries where, even if it's technically easy and even from a, business and sales tax and all these other reasons easy, is the support. We do offer a lot of hands-on support to our users, and I only speak and write in English. And so, I feel a little bad that, entering into a country like Germany, I know a lot of people speak English and that's great, but we just wouldn't be able to offer the same level of support in these countries that are not English speaking countries, because all the other countries we're in right now, Canada, US, Australia, and the UK are obviously all English speaking, a little bit of French in Canada. But, so that remains to be seen as well. Is just, are we able to support our users in other countries that speak different languages? Because what would come with launching in Germany, we're not going to change like the interface of Flipwise to be in German, for example. It would still be in English, and so it would almost require that you're a relatively good English speaker, I think, in order to use it. But we still want to be able to provide good support.
What are your current thoughts on that, Justin? Do you feel like there's more for us to figure out there? Or do you feel like just got to try it and see what happens? Or?
You mean whether we go into an EU country or not, like that, a non-English speaking EU country?
Yeah, exactly.
I think the way you said it makes sense. Like, let's pick 1 or 2. And I think, eBay does release data about their countries that are the largest presence. And I do think Germany is up there. Spain might be high. I can't remember. So I'm thinking, pick 1 or 2 and see how that goes. And just, if it feels good, then open it up. And if the demand is there, people want it. I definitely want to support sellers all over if we can, but I also just want to make sure the experience is good for them,
Yep.
We got one more question here from the Supa. Is there a way to filter items by sale duration? I'd love to see my fastest moving items and slowest moving items in one place. So that is possible, not necessarily to filter, but there is to sort. You can sort by sale duration. So when you're on your all sales screen in Flipwise, you can look at the time to sell column. If you click that changes the sort order. So you can see the things that sold the fastest or the shortest. And then you can filter it by date. So you could say like, hey, in the month of March, what was my fastest selling item? So yes, the answer to that is yes, as I just worked it through in my head. I do like, the reason I was hesitating, I think, is because, I do think we need to introduce more filtering options. Right now, you can only filter by date and sort by a lot of other different things. But I do think it would be helpful to be able to filter by other values, such as sale duration. Show me everything that sold in less than a day, for example. Or show me everything that sold on eBay, or show me everything that sold from this purchase location. Like you can get it all that data right now, but it's not a part of the core filtering interface. You have to sort of, you have to go to a store purchase location and then click a different button. And so you can get there. All the plumbing is there, but we just need to kind of build that into the filtering UI, which I think we should do.
Yep.
All right. Well, we're here at 40 minutes. I think that's a good time. I think we'll come back and do another episode once we have that income statement out. So hopefully soon, and we'll talk about the income statement and the tax work as it progresses. But yeah, this was good. Thanks for joining me, Michael.
Yeah, good to talk about this stuff, man.
All right. See ya.
Later.